welcome to Day Home Divas. I'm Joanne.
I'm Cash.
And I'm Sophia.
This episode, we talk with Michelle Tasa. Michelle is a teacher and a curriculum developer. She has worked at schools locally and internationally and owns Mind Studio, Art Studio, and tutors kids. Welcome to the podcast, Michelle.
Thanks for having me.
Michelle, you have taught at schools in Shanghai, China, England, Ethiopia, and Canada. How would you say our education system compares to the others?
I'd say in Canada in general is behind some of the international schools that I was at. Having said that, I was working mostly in really top tier private schools that were funded by, really pricey tuitions. So I have the benefit of having sort of cutting edge education that's on the edge. We don't have that luxury in Canada, having public education. But even so, it was a little disappointing to come back with my kids when they were 13 and 14 to come back to Alberta and sort of go backwards in time a bit in education overall.
Right. Yeah, I went to school in England, and it was definitely a culture shock when we moved to Canada into the different school system. I wouldn't say necessarily, way back then, that Canada was behind or in front or anything like that. It just seemed different, like less structure almost in England.
The UK government had decided that quality of teaching was really impacting education, and they were going to be really rigid about teacher performance and what everybody did in the classroom. And so that brought in the whole Ofsted system. So what you probably were part of was just an effort to really make teaching quality. It took away a lot of your autonomy as a teacher and some of the creativity and I'd say some of the joy. And in Canada, there's still more of these are the standards that we want taught, but you can do them any way that you feel. I appreciate both. For different reasons.
For sure.
But yeah, I think that's part of what in the UK, the structure was an attempt to sort of get education up to where they wanted it to be. I'm not sure if it was accessible or not. I don't know. That's up for debate.
Yeah.
I heard China is kind of very strict on their education too.
Well, again, so when I say I worked in China, so Chinese nationals are not allowed to have international education. They have to be educated in the Chinese schools. I was working with international passport holders. So those are expats who are overseas for whatever reason. The CEO of BMW has his kids in Shanghai, and where's he going to send his kids? But also a lot of people had found a loophole. The wealthier population of Chinese nationals would have their babies overseas so that they would have a dual citizenship. And so they have been starting to sort of try to crack down on that. But really, the schools I was in were very international, like people from all over, but probably about half were Chinese nationals who were trying to get a Western education so that they could compete with international students everywhere. So really, I don't have much to say about the actual Chinese education system. I wasn't part of that. I was very much part of the expat system.
Yeah. It's funny, you see some of the reels on like Instagram and TikTok and stuff of even their preschool system and stuff. And I'm just like, wow, that is incredible. Some of the stuff that the kids do there versus here. And it's not necessarily like academic wise, but it's like teaching them skills for like 5-year-olds that are cooking and 5-year-olds that are sewing and stuff. And I'm like, wow, we missed the mark somehow.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. We are quite afraid. And that's part of, that legal culture, I guess, of like, we don't want anyone getting harmed. A little bit helicopter parenting taken into schooling, right? Because we know that kids learn by making mistakes and even sometimes harming themselves slightly. We don't want them hurting themselves all the time, but sometimes you have to fall and scrape your knee in order to know that that's maybe not a safe thing to do. And we've really eliminated that in the school system just to protect ourselves from being sued. And so I think that unfortunately that atmosphere really restricts what we're doing. One of the things that I really miss from being overseas is that there's so much more of a focus on the skills that you need to be happy, successful,
Yeah.
achieve clearly. But those skills are very much things like collaborating, communicating, critical thinking, problem solving. There's so much information now that we have access to. Like the internet is exploding. There's no way that you could write a social studies textbook, for example, that would in any way cover the content that would be required to make someone knowledgeable. So what we need to shift to is teaching kids how to find out what they need to know. And maybe more importantly, how to find out what is correct, what is baseless, what is propaganda, those. And
Yeah.
so that the focus on critical thinking as opposed to memorizing, understanding what someone's telling you, that's a huge shift that we've yet to really get to here. I think you have to let go of content and be like, okay, so it's, do we need to learn all of the ways, the intricacies of Canadian government? And to a certain extent we do, but we really need to understand, well, why are systems in place? Why do we need rules? So getting the bigger ideas. And so that's what
Yeah.
international schools are doing better than we are at this point.
Right. I mean, back in the day, like, not to show my age too much here, but like we learned like this is how you find information. You go to the library, you use the Dewey Decimal System and all that. So they taught us how to find information back then.
Yeah.
Now, like, I mean, I hope they don't teach that in school anymore. But now we just need
Well, I
to
don't think
how
they
to
can
find.
because information isn't curated anymore. If you just Google search, you could find anybody who can put up a flashy website that looks like it's accurate and sourced properly. So you can't teach the same way that we used to. Like
Exactly.
the information we were giving was, in a sense, accurate. I mean, it might have
Yeah.
been biased, but it was accurate. Now you can't say that really about much. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely need to switch. Okay, now this is how you look for information. And like you said, this is how you identify what's real, what is not real, what is, because I mean, I myself fall for like, oh, look at this cute video. And I'll send it to my son. And he's like, Mom, it's AI. I'm like, damn it. Like, I thought that one was real. But, like it's so, like technology has got so good. And if it can trick us, it's got to easily be tricking some kids, I would assume, to a certain age. Because then once they hit a certain age, they're probably a lot more clever than we are at identifying AI type stuff, right? But the younger ones, schools could start teaching some more, okay, look for this. And if you think this is real, then okay, check out this, like more ways for them to identify the real versus not real type thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The school you teach at follows the Alberta Education Program of Studies for K to 12, but can you tell us a little bit about how it's different from standard schools?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have the benefit of working in a charter school, and a charter school does follow Alberta curriculum, and it is overseen by the province. But when you have a charter, you're allowed to explore different aspects. So the charter school I'm in is it's very much focused on entrepreneurship and global awareness. And those things really appealed to me. When we first came back from China, I was not interested in teaching in Canada. So I opened my own business and so just launched into entrepreneurship myself, having no idea what I was doing, and did a lot of upskilling along the way. And so it appeals to me for that reason, but also because when education is tied to real relevant things, and kids can understand why you might be learning something, it just changes everything. And again, that's something that we do maybe not so well in the school systems I've been in Canada, that you do it because the teacher said or because the test requires it, but you don't really understand why am I learning this. Yeah, it's really exciting to have that entrepreneurship embedded in what we do all the time. And that's not just like making and earning money and creating businesses, but it's the skills like problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, collaboration. Those skills are highlighted throughout the year, and we really focus on integrating them into our subject matter.
That's incredible. We were always taught in school that like once you finish school, you go to university and then you can become like a lawyer, a doctor, a policeman, a fireman. And it was the basic things. And I remember when I got older, I was like, but is there more? Like what, like there's got to be other jobs, right? Even now I'm like, oh my God, that's a job? Like, wow, that's incredible. So I think
Yeah.
the public system definitely misses the mark on some level of like what other options you have out there. So I think like that's great that a school is teaching entrepreneur stuff like
Yeah,
that. Like,
I agree too. Yeah, my kids are 17 and 18, and I've actually encouraged them not to jump into university. I don't want them to go into debt, getting a
yeah,
degree that may or may not take them where they want to go. So I've said, what are you passionate about? What are the different ways you can get there? Don't just assume you have to do it the way everybody has done it,
yeah,
because there are creative ways to get around putting that money into the school system, into post-secondary education, the way we've always done. You're just seeing so many young people graduate with degrees and then they can't get jobs in their field. And that's not what I want for my kids. So, yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I pushed my kids into like state. So they did. I say I pushed. Actually, they pushed me because my oldest wanted to be an accountant, and he was so smart, like with numbers and stuff. I'm like, yes, do it, do it. And then
Yeah.
he like was like, I want to be a welder. And I remember being like, no, no, you're so smart. You could do so much. Like go to university. And so he kind of pushed me. And then once I
Yeah.
was like, you know what? You're right. This is like at the end of the day, I just want you to be happy with what you do. And I mean, he's done so well. I'm so proud of him. He's done great. If he hadn't have given me that push, I think I would have really not understood that.
Yeah, no, I think that we really need to let go of this idea that intellectualism is the highest, achievement. The trades, those are incredibly important and very well paying. And my son too, my son is a great writer. But realistically, is he going to be able to launch a career as a writer? Maybe, maybe not. But so for him to look into a trade, that gives him the ability to maybe work 6 months of the year doing something that he enjoys hands on and make a lot of money, and then take the other parts of the year to do his passion, right? And to maybe make something happen there. I
Yeah,
think we really have to look at how to not lock ourselves into a career that's going to be 50 years long anymore. That's not the way the world works anymore. It
right.
does. Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember because I'm from Quebec, and it's like getting out of college, you have to take their test in French, and I was like, but why? Like, if
Yeah.
only you in Quebec. And I was like, I ain't doing this, and I left. But
Yeah.
or like things in school, like here they give you mandatory courses that you need for your class, whereas in like Quebec, oh, you're taking a correctional course, you have to take gym class. Why do I have to take gym class? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
it's not relevant unless it was relevant to like running and actually doing a correctional part, but it wasn't.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm
So,
someone who loves literature and I love high school English, but is anyone like how many of us are going to write novels or have to analyze
oh,
poetry
I
or
did.
understand Shakespeare? Like, yeah, there aren't that many of us. So if we're
Yeah,
passionate about that, we should take that. But does everybody need to be able to do that? I don't know. And the same with math. Like at what level, like grade 9 math seems to be about what all I need to survive and be really successful in my life. So, whoa, trying to get through grade 12 math was hard for me. Those are
yeah,
the things we maybe need to look at in terms of vocational and collegiate, high school levels. I think, and that's happening. That I do think that we are lucky to be in Alberta because they do offer choice. There are a lot of charter
yeah,
schools and private schools, and homeschooling is I don't want to say simple because homeschooling is very complicated, but it's an easy choice that's supported by the government. I will say
right.
that, right?
Yeah. But even like, so the high school English, I mean, I've written novels. The English didn't help me. That's what editors are for, right? Like,
Right.
and my
Yeah.
editor is always like, did you go to English class? I'm like, I did, but it doesn't help at this. Like, I'm sorry, but let me
Yeah.
just pay you to do that stuff. Like, so I
Yeah.
agree. There's things that we learn in school that are just not necessary. And then things that would have been so helpful, like nobody taught us about taxes. Nobody taught us about writing a check. Not that they're
Yeah.
relevant anymore, but at the
Yeah.
time they were, and we didn't learn how. Nobody taught us just basic things, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the school could touch on the fundamental parts that you absolutely need in life. Some of the stuff we learned was just nonsense, and I don't remember any of it,
Yeah.
any of the nonsense stuff, right? So
Yeah.
some of the really helpful things, that would have been great to learn.
It brings home the number system, and I'm like, what's that? Like, can't help you. I have no
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
Right?
I was going to say some of the greatest things that I miss from teaching internationally, they're not that difficult to embed. In fact, I do that, in my classroom here. It's as simple as taking a content that we need to learn and spending time on that, but then giving them choice on how they want to show their learning. Like, do you want to make a video? Cool. Do you want to write a paper? Awesome. Do you want to make a play? Let's do that, so that they're doing skills that are exciting for them. They're also telling me whether or not, like, I'm finding out what they need to know and what I can help them learn better. But just that level of choice begins to help
Yeah.
them push into skills of like, oh, I really like that, or I do not want to do that, or what can I learn?
Exactly.
So like valuable skills like editing a video, that's really important. That's really cool skill to learn that has nothing to do with Canadian geography, but we can fuse them, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we know that not all children learn the same. Do you think it's time for the Alberta Board of Education to do a complete curriculum overhaul?
That's a really good question. And I mean, you're speaking to someone, I have 2 kids with ADHD and I myself have ADHD. So, and I work with many students who do. And that's just one neurodiversity. There are many. I think what we need to understand is that people's brains work differently, and a lot of how that difference shows up for us is really about the way we've organized our society. For 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, you work this during this time and then you don't work during this time. Those neurodiversities don't appear when someone is in charge of their schedule or how they work. If just in terms of ADHD, for example, if you're allowed to, work whenever you want in a week, and you spend 10 hours hyper focused and you just get tons of stuff done, you can be as productive as someone who's at the office 40 hours. But if you don't let that ADHD brain have the freedom to do that, then it's just difficult. You can't get the same level of creativity and productivity out of them. So yeah, there is some need to do that. I don't think the curriculum has to change. I think what has to change is how we deliver it, and also the recognition that we need to personalize education. Like being part of these schools that had big budgets, it also meant I had a lot of pressure to make sure students were successful. So there isn't just handing everyone in the class a worksheet or a package and saying, here you go. I have to make sure all of those kids succeed. So I have to check in with them. I have to assess them. If it's not working for them, I have to find another way for them to learn. And that is what has to change about the way Alberta teaches. And when I'm tutoring students right now from different systems in Alberta, that's sort of what I find. I'm like, your teacher could do this for you, but they may not know how. They may not have the time or the resources. I can do it, but it's not because that child is incapable of learning or in any way needing, an IPP or an alternate program. They just need it taught differently or a different way of showing it. And when you can get a skilled teacher, that happens, right? You get all the kids, you find ways to meet their needs. I think that's what needs to change. How that happens, that's beyond my pay grade, thankfully.
Right? Yeah, that's totally true though. I'm ADHD myself, and I do not learn from somebody telling me something or from me reading it. I have to do it myself. So
yeah, the exact same way.
So I think for kids who have neurodiversity, the most powerful thing you could teach them is how their brain works and how they can advocate for themselves. No one's going to do it for them right now, unfortunately. So for you to know like, don't give me a manual. Is there a video of someone doing it? Let me watch the video. Or can I just go shadow someone? That's how I'll learn. That's how you get what you need. So if kids know that for themselves, then they can approach every teacher and employer they have and say, you know what? You want the best out of me? So do I. Here's how we're going to get it.
Yeah. Exactly. My youngest, he's also ADHD, and if he can have even one headphone in listening to music, he can listen to you or read it and learn it that way. But he has to have that. I always call it's distracting his distractions. That's what
Yes.
the music does. And then
Yeah.
he can learn and listen and whatever. But if you take that music away from him, he does not hear anything that you're saying. So
Absolutely. Like, as
yeah,
you know, you're probably listening to the sound of traffic outside. I can hear the hum of the fluorescents right now. If there's any movement, it makes actually a superpower for teachers because I'll be like working with a student. I'll be like, Joe, I know what you just did. I'm like,
yeah,
because you're aware of everything, but it's exhausting and you can't
yeah,
do it for very long, which is why our focus is short. If you
yeah,
can, yeah, if you can have something strong to attend to, like that headphone, then you can maybe focus on something else so that you're not having to process everything. It's a very strange part of our brain, but yes, that's exactly
yeah.
how it works.
Yeah, he drives me nuts. We'll be watching a movie and he's got his headphones on, listening to like music, and then he's reading a magazine. I'm like, "Are you even watching the movie?" He can tell me exactly what has
Yeah.
just been said. And I'm like, "Oh my God, like I need silence so I can focus on that one thing." Because as soon as someone talks to me or I read my phone, I'm like, "Wait, what happened? I missed it all." So we're so
Yes.
different that way. So I can only imagine if, let's say, you have three ADHD kids in one classroom, the differences in their learning is going to be just humongous. So
Yeah.
for a teacher to know exactly what each kid needs and stuff is tough when you've got 30 kids. I mean, the teacher
Yes.
might know what each kid needs, but to be able to help them in those ways when you've got 30 kids in your classroom, what do you do? So I think
Absolutely.
our
Yeah. I
biggest
think
thing
I'm
is
just
smaller
stepping into
classrooms.
an admin role here in the school I'm currently teaching at, and I'll be helping the K-3 teachers. And that's, one of the first things that we've said at our meeting is like, it's going to look like a lot of work how we do this, but on the other end, you won't have all the behaviors that you have to normally deal with
Right.
because you're not going to have kids who are bored or kids who are struggling with their self-esteem because they feel like they don't know what's going on. So I would
Yeah.
gladly trade behaviors because I care about kids and I know all the teachers I work with do as well. But also, that's not the fun part of my job. So I
No, of
will
course not.
spend
Yeah.
hours creating 7 different ways to do this one lesson because I know it's going to make my life easier and I'm going to see amazing growth. But yeah, it is
Yeah.
a lot of work. You just have to realize
Yeah.
it trades off.
Exactly. So what struggle do you see the most often with children and their learning then?
I'd say, unfortunately, and this is part of like developing nations, overall, is we really have pushed creativity right out. And I think a lot of times we've associated creativity with talent or like artistic ability somehow, when actually creativity is finding solutions to problems that other people can't see. If you look at our world right now, wow, do we need some creative people? There are a lot of
Yeah.
problems that aren't getting solved, and we need solutions people haven't thought of. But our school system doesn't value that and actively actually teaches kids not to question, not to think around, not to find different ways. So that
Right.
is the biggest thing I found is that trying to help kids spark wonder again. Like, I'll just get a class of kids like maybe like, have you guys ever thought about how electricity works? They're like, no. When's recess, right? Like that's a
Yeah.
challenge. I want them to question. I want them to think about the world, but we really have taught them just sit and listen. I'll tell you what you need to know, and then you do the task, and then I'll give you the grade. It's not what we need in our world. We really don't. We need leaders.
Yeah.
I will say that the new social studies and science curriculum that have come through. I mean, so I'm teaching grade 2, and I by no means have looked at curriculum across the board because who's got time for that right now? But
Yeah.
I'm happy with the way that's moving. That is moving to deeper questions. So instead of being very focused on information and knowledge, the questions are like, well, how are decisions made? Why, how do people solve problems? And then it gets into sort of levels of government, and there's a lot more that a teacher can do there, because if you start with a question, we can bring in indigenous self-government and ways of governing. We can bring in like, how does your family make decisions? Or like, what if you wanted to make your own world? How would you make the decisions? So that Kids
That's
can really
fantastic.
do the thought process as opposed to the memorization. So I do think they're moving in the right direction. Let's hope it keeps going. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That will help kids so much, like in so many different ways, right? Like figuring out how to solve their own problems is huge. Some kids really struggle.
Yeah.
So, how can parents see when it's time that their child may need a tutor?
That's a good question. I think it's really good to be in contact with the teacher as much as you can. Like, I think sometimes parents are afraid to pester or, to be too much involved, but it is, you do want to make sure that your child is on that teacher's radar. Not that they're going to forget kids, but there are a lot of things going on in a teacher's life, a lot of balls they're juggling. So to be reminded is a great thing. Or to just be really plugged in to say, like, is there anything that you think that we could be working on? Or do you have any suggestions for resources? And if the teacher is giving you indications that they seem to struggle, then it might be possible to just ask the teacher, like, do you think maybe tutoring would be something they need or could benefit from? Yeah, I think the best thing to do is to start looking at sort of the way the child is doing, and the teacher is maybe your best source of that. And then the other part of that is, how is the child feeling? Like, if you ask them, how do they feel at school? Do they feel successful? Are they happy? Do they feel like they got it? And if they're not, that might be a time to ask them if they might want to work with someone to help.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be forever. These can be like short term. I find a lot of kids that I end up working with, they just need some focused encouragement and a boost to help them know that it's just a few things you're missing here. It's not there's nothing wrong with you, right? Because I think that we're very hard on ourselves as human beings. Kids are no different.
Yeah. I always kind of figured once you have a tutor that you will always need a tutor, but that makes sense that sometimes it's just for a short period. Sometimes it's for longer. But I mean, if I'd have had a tutor in math, man, it would have been the entire way through school. But
well, I think you want to, when you're working with a tutor as well, have, it's much like when you're working with, I don't know, a therapist, let's say, if something's not improving, then something's not working. So the tutoring shouldn't last forever. The tutoring should be resulting in something. Otherwise, we need to tweak it, right? Or we need to change what's happening here. So there should be some part and plan of, like, let's assess and make sure that we're getting what we want. So if you're looking at tutors, make sure they've got that in place for how are we going to know that what you're doing is successful? How are we going to make sure that we're getting there?
That's such an excellent point.
Is there anything a parent should look for specifically when looking for a tutor for their child?
I guess it depends on the subject and the age of the student. I think when you're dealing with reading problems, for example, you want to catch reading problems before they enter grade 3 for a really important reason. In grade 3, we shift from teaching how to read to teaching how to comprehend. So they're not going to learn how to decode words as much anymore. Now they're going to be reading for science and for social and for health. They're going to be required to read in order to access the curriculum. So if a student enters grade 3 quite behind their reading, they're going to find it hard, and they're not going to necessarily get the level of tutoring that they need in reading. So if you're struggling with reading in particular, younger kids, definitely look for someone who understands early literacy, because it's very specialized, and it's not something we learn in university. It's something you learn hands-on on the job. And I'm very lucky that I had a really great mentor and ended up finding a way to really understand early literacy. And there are many of us out there. There are also many teachers who maybe have taught grade 6 or 5, and they might think they know how to teach how to read. They might not have the specialized knowledge that you need.
That's interesting. I had no idea of that. Sorry.
With you working in a charter school, my kids also go to charter school. And from grades 1 to 3, I believe it was, they use phonograms. Phonograms, do you use those as well?
Yeah, I think that we went through a period in Alberta, like across Canada, probably North America, really, where we moved away from being very specific with reading and identifying the sounds, and then moved into sort of like, we're just going to absorb it, like it'll just happen. And then that lasted very short. It was short-lived because it's not real. That's an important part. And I think by swinging back to, they need to learn actual sounds. They also need to learn how English works, rhyming and syllables and the musicality of language. And then they also need to really be involved in literature and reading great books and not having to like decode it all. But like, okay, well, that's why we're doing this, because this book is amazing. Like, okay, mom's reading me Harry Potter and I want to read that for myself. So now I'm going to figure out what these sounds are. English is really complicated. It's actually a terrible language to learn. Yeah. There are so many rules that are instantly broken. Yeah. So yes, we definitely want to have a program that's rich in phonics or phonograms, in like literature overall, and in like oral language skills, like the rhyming and playing around with sounds.
Yeah, my kids, my children's reading is very, 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 very strong. And I believe that's why, just that early literacy and, learning it from a very young age, like starting in kindergarten, right? Yeah. And they're very strong readers. I think it's because of those. I think they're called phonograms, right?
Yeah.
It's been a while. She's going into grade 7 now.
You're just talking about the sounds the letters make. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
I think if a child is a strong reader, they're far more likely to succeed in our education system, because everything is very visual and everything is, we read to learn. So it's a good thing.
I remember, so when we first moved to Canada, so I was 11, so I struggled with spelling really bad. The teacher would always say, spell it how it sounds. I'm like, it sounds different to me than to you, right? Like when I say water, that's not how it's spelled. And they were like, no, that's how we learn to spell. You spell it how it sounds. And then I'm like, okay. So then my spelling was atrocious, because they're like, you spell everything really weird. I'm like, that's how it sounds. And also now it sounds differently when I say it versus how you say it because of your Canadian accent. And the teacher was like, Canadians don't have an accent. I'm like, no, you do to English people, you do. It was a night, and I still cannot spell very well at all, but I always blame it on that. And as much as people say like, okay, you're in your 40s now, you should have got past that. But that's your foundation when you're learning to spell, right? So as I got older, it didn't change, because in my brain, I'm always spell it how it sounds.
Absolutely.
So thank God Google can pick up what I'm trying to say.
I would put spelling on the bottom of the list of literacy. It is and parents, you are all spending too much time on spelling lists because it's easy, I know, but there are spell checks for a reason, right? Like we've moved on the same way that we have calculators now. We probably don't need to memorize our timetables. I'm going to get shot by a bazillion math teachers right now, but like, let's put our time and energy into what we need to understand, because the world is complicated. Spelling is, you want to have a foundation, but if you are struggling between, well, what should I do? Should I read or should I work on the spelling list? Read with them. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. And even grammar, like I remember the rule of like a comma goes where you would take a pause. So every time I'm writing something and I try and read it out, and I swear I pause way more than I should, because I'm always like have multiple commas. Well, now I feel better not knowing how to spell so well.
Yeah. No, that's those bigger skills, the ideas and putting sentences together and making yourself understood and persuading someone. Those are the literacy skills that we want, and understanding what someone's trying to say in written and oral form. Those are far more important than whether or not we can spell a word correctly. So
100%. So what grade did children usually begin to require additional help? Is it the grade or prior to grade 3 for the reading thing, or is it different for every subject?
I think it doesn't get caught early enough, unfortunately. Like I think that I think it's a good idea to have conversations with your teachers, and maybe even look at where, like I hesitate to use like this is where you should be at the end of kindergarten or grade 1, but we use them
Right.
only because we don't want to be so far behind that kids are getting lost in the shuffle. Your kids are going to be everywhere, right? You might have a student who struggles in kindergarten to really grasp literacy, but then they're going to take off. They're going to find a book series they love in grade 1 or grade 2, and then
Yeah.
suddenly you've got super readers. But keeping in mind that a student leaving kindergarten should probably be able to read, four-word sentences. And if they can't, it's not a panic, but you might want to just keep an eye on things. And if by, the middle of grade 1, they're not bringing home simple books with 2 or 3 sentences on a page, then it's time to maybe, meet with the teacher and just say, okay, so where are we in how, where are we in terms of what you see and what I'm seeing? But I think that a lot of times they're not getting caught early enough. And that's sadly because of funding. So an IPP requires a lot of extra resources and skills to, extra people to put into place. And kids often don't really need necessarily an IPP. They just need some extra intervention.
Right.
And also, if you do need an ed psych where, a student is being analyzed for learning difficulties or neurodiversity, there's this push to not do it until grade 3, because maybe it'll sort itself out. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, if it hasn't sorted itself out by grade 3, now you've got a bigger problem. So I wish that we did catch those earlier.
Yeah.
And just make sure that we are giving some intervention and boosting them along, just to make sure we don't end up in a situation where they're, in middle of grade 3 or end of grade 3 and really not reading very well.
Yeah. I like the part that you mentioned about finding the right things to read. That is huge. My youngest did not like reading at all. And so the teachers thought he was behind in his reading. And then he started reading car magazines. And the teacher's like, no, you can't read those. You need to read a book. And I was like, hold on now.
Oh, good for you.
I'm
Good for you.
As long as he's reading
Yes.
is reading. And if he's meeting the level that you need him to be at, and he was technically ahead because of the words in the car magazines. And she was like, but does he even understand it? So I'm like, I don't know, ask him.
Yeah.
And he would be like, yep, this is how you take apart a carburetor. This is how you do. I'm like, seems like he's understanding it. He's just not reading what you want him to read. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
I think that's huge.
graphic novels have exploded, and a lot of people think that those aren't really reading. If that's what kids are interested in, and there's text on a page, yeah, there's a lot of visual, but if they are absorbing text, that's what we want. Because I'm in grade 2. I teach grade 1, 2 mostly. I end up teaching in grade 1 and 2 for the most part. And as soon as I can hook a kid on a series, I'm like, oh, we got you.
Yeah.
All right. So you love, I can't even think of one, like Geronimo Stilton. Wow, there's 20 books to go for. So let's read this one, and then let's read the next one. And so trying to figure out what sort of series might grab their attention. And then also, like you said, they don't have to be kids' books that they're reading. You could read a book that they're interested in, and they choose, you read together, you read the more difficult words, and they pick out the ones that they can understand. Yeah, there's just a lot more that we really want to get their interest, right? That's so much more important than reading what we think they should read.
I had to go and talk to my son's teacher because they would send home those books that are color coded for X, Y, and Z, and you had to go through it. And I was like, he can't keep doing these because he will memorize it the first time. And then what's the point of going over it? And he hated it.
Yeah.
So he was like, as long as he read a book, then she's like, and don't tell the other people because and they'll be all doing it. But she's like, as long as he read a book, and his books are chapter books.
Yeah.
And he just finished grade 2. So I was like, I don't mind him reading this. I'm like, but we're struggling with what you're sending home, and we just can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
He hates it.
That's the kind of stuff that I, as a teacher, want to know, because those leveled systems they're key for some of the kids. If you read at your level, and it's not too difficult, but it's not too easy, then your growth is so much faster because you're just learning a small set of new words, and it's curated to do that, to build vocabulary slowly and successfully. So most kids do well with those leveled readers. But as soon as I hear from a parent that like, yeah, they're bored or they're not doing, or I want to know that, because then we can figure out something else, right? And yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think the best thing you can do is talk to the teacher and really see that as a team, like you guys are on a team together. You both want the same thing. And hopefully you've got a really responsive teacher who's willing to, to do that.
Is there any specific subject that you see most common as a tutor, or is it kind of across the board?
For me, it's mostly reading and writing. So again, for neurodiverse students, writing is really difficult for a lot of reasons. The fine motor part of writing, it is an extra level, not just the brain power required to come up with words, and it's often so slow compared to our brain. Our brain is spitting out ideas so fast, and we're trying to scrawl it on this paper, and it's frustrating.
Yep.
And again, if you can advocate for your kids who are like this to scribe to someone, and then maybe they take that scribed work and they edit it, that's valuable. At least they're getting their ideas out. Or if they can use, if they can type, or if they can dictate, that it really is a hard thing to understand. But our brains go so fast, and these kids, they're kids, they're just learning how to print, and that's so slow.
Yeah.
So writing is the other one. And also there are so many rules to writing, like the comma. Where does the comma go? Yeah. Why am I putting this? I don't understand. And so writing would be the second thing I think that kids really are having trouble with. Math, you tend to see that more at higher levels. That kids struggle with different things at different times, and we're all, we're good at different things, aren't we? Math is not my strong suit. It's good I'm in primary school because I got that part, but teaching a junior high math would be a struggle for me.
But realistically, why do we need fractions if we're not going into something that doesn't use fractions? I couldn't tell you fractions if my life depended on it.
Yeah, there are some things that are, there's a certain amount of mathematical knowledge that we need. And then the rest is really quite specialized. And we don't necessarily need to be focused on that. But we do need to get through the system. And that's what we have to remember, is that the system requires these things to move through. And until the system changes, we do have to kind of play in there, right? We do have to do that.
Is conventional schooling no longer working for neurodivergent children? Now we are learning and understanding more about their different needs.
And I think that if the curriculum is delivered the way it has been, then no, it's not working for neurodivergent students. And it has to be looked at, and this is I guess teaching is, it's a profession, yes, but it's it's a skill, like a craft, I guess, it's craftsmanship. There's the craftsmanship of teaching. For sure. To take what you're given and to make it work for each student, especially those neurodiverse students, that takes skill. And so what I hope that we see more in Alberta is investment in professional development, and in valuing the fact that we are taking away a lot of resources in our school systems right now. I think my junior high and high school students, they didn't even know that a school counselor existed. So there's very little mental health help there. That's just one example. Special education used to be far more, our special education teachers used to be far more involved in the actual teaching. Now it's more in paperwork and supporting teachers that way. So if we're going to pull resources back like that, because we are overcrowded and we don't have enough teaching, and we're struggling with that part, then we really need to invest in teaching teachers how to teach. And we have all of that within ourselves. There are really masterful teachers in our school systems. And if they're given the ability to share and to mentor others, that I think that will happen. It can happen at a grassroots level. If principals can recognize the value of having people share their expertise, that's going to be far more valuable than having the province, create some professional learning that here's what we're all going to do and here's how it happens. So like I feel pretty lucky that our school that I'm working with right now we've just shifted our leadership to be, there's a K-3 lead, and that's going to be myself. And then there's a 4-6 lead and a 7-9 lead. And that lead role is really mentoring. It's not, evaluating and making sure everything is done. It's really going into classrooms and saying, what do you need to be the best teacher that you're going to be? Because then I can impact hundreds of kids. I've got my 26, but I can impact 120 if I'm working with teachers to help them figure that out. So if we can, because I guess that's a long answer to your question. If we just do it the way we've always done it, then no, it's not meeting the needs of neurodiverse kids at all. And it won't.
Yeah. And like, I also work in a school, and I'm finding that every classroom needs an education assistant, and they don't have one. Right. And the teachers are really struggling to teach those neurodivergent children, and they need the help of an EA, and they don't get one. They
may have access to an EA and not really know how to use that resource, like not know how to tap into that second teacher in the room and really use them. But the other thing too is like I did briefly take both of my kids out and homeschool them after we came back from China, when school was just not working for them. And like, I knew this already, but even being an experienced homeschool mom, you don't need the amount of time that we are at school to cover the curriculum that we have. A homeschooled child can do everything that we do in an hour and a half or 2 hours a day. So we need to remember that for our neurodivergent kids, if we can give them really focused, excellent education, and then the rest of the time build their self-esteem, help them grow as human beings, they're going to be okay. But we've got to make sure they get that focused, chunk that they need. And if we don't do that, they just float through and they don't get, their needs met.
Interesting. I had no idea that you didn't need that whole day.
Yeah. So if you think about, because we do a lot of lining up, we do a lot of waiting for moving from class to class. We do a lot of waiting for everybody to finish. And that's valuable too. Like, I don't want to say that recess. Yeah. But the actual content of our learning can be done. I would say a whole day can be done in an hour and a half or 2 hours of if you just worked with one kid, that's how long it would take. You don't have to wait for anyone else. You don't have to, line up. You don't have to move from one place to another. Yeah.
That would have been great.
Yeah. And so the families that are able to do homeschooling, and that's purely a financial situation for many people who would like to homeschool, but they just cannot financially do that. There are ways to look into micro schools or learning pods if that's really something that you're passionate about. But also, like we've been talking about, just trying to advocate for our kids. There are ways to make a classroom not just functional, but like really a beautiful place for a kid to grow and to develop. We just have to make sure we're working together as parents and teachers and upskilling teachers to understand how to work with neurodiversity.
Yeah.
How receptive are children in general to having the extra help?
That's a good question. I think there might be a few here and there who feel like they don't want to be singled out, but most of the time I'm still surprised at how they don't want to stop working with you. They're like, can we just read a little bit more? I'm like, okay, but I have these other 20 kids I have to read with too, but we'll just one more page. It's okay. Most kids really do want a chance to show you what they know. And if it's targeted at what they're doing and they're feeling successful, they absolutely want the extra help. I think if the extra help is like, do this page, and like, if you don't do it, we're not going to get to this, then yeah, they're not going to want to. I think that maybe is part of the skill of a tutor. When you're looking at tutors, how are they going to engage kids? How are they going to make sure that the kids want to be involved? And because that's a key, right? Because most kids do. They thrive on our attention. They want our attention and our encouragement and help. They do.
And they love the positive feedback.
Absolutely. We all do. Yeah.
Well, I have one that's kind of shy, so like you give him positive feedback and he actually kind of like goes back from it a little
Yeah.
bit,
Yeah.
but secretly he loves it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you got to kind of do it like low key. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now to switch focus. What made you decide to start an art studio?
We came back from China and to Canada, and the kids were in junior high and high school. And I didn't want to teach. I didn't want to teach in the public system in Canada. And so I thought to myself, like, if I could make the perfect classroom, because this is the skill I can, this is what I can market. This is who I am. I'm a teacher. If I could make the perfect classroom, there's no principal, there's no curriculum, what would it look like? And that's what I created. So it wasn't really an art studio, but it's hard to call it anything else. What I did is I filled a room full of everything I could think of to build or create anything. So there's glue guns, and there were wire cutters and hammers and nails and recycled materials and paper and just everything. And then I would have sort of open hours and invite kids to come in. It was like, okay, so what are we going to make? They'd be like, I don't know. What are we making? I'm like, hey, you're the boss. I'm just here to help you. Because to me, that's what kids needed, was an opportunity to create, to make mistakes, and to have someone go, hey, have you thought about putting those together like this, maybe? And then step back and let them keep going. And so I loved it. I did. And I actually had a small studio in New Horizon Mall for a while, and unfortunately wasn't able to keep that location going for, lots of reasons. And all just being managing my own family too. And so I've had to go back into full-time work and let that go to more of a side hustle. But I'm really passionate about the fact that we need more places like that for kids, where they can go and, think about like the Tellus Spark, that little area. There's just a small little area where they can pull things apart, or they can take stuffies apart and stick them back together. Like, that idea, but a whole room. That's what I created. So that's why. And then the other reason is because art for me has been really, really healing. And the reason that we left China is because my husband passed away, and that grief really devastated us, all of us. Art for me was so healing. And then when I saw how it was impacting kids, it just convinced me even more that art, not the kind that necessarily gets placed on a wall, the kind that lets you pour out your emotions in a way that is just different than speaking it or thinking it. It's transformational. And so some of the ways that I ended up moving in my business were into more expressive arts, touching up to art therapy, but I'm not an art therapist and I can't claim to be one. But just bumping up against that, using art to help kids express their emotions, help them look at more difficult concepts maybe. And I loved that too. Yeah. So that's, again, another long answer to your question. That's why art. Yeah.
Oh, good.
What form of art do you gravitate to the most then?
My personal art, I do a lot of painting, and mostly with acrylics because it's less expensive than oil paints. I started with oils when I was younger, but I like to mess around. That's the ADHD. I like to mess around with all kinds of things. I'm always doing, mixed media, or learn how to carve stamps and teach a class on that, or So, but if I just have time on my own in my studio, it's usually going to be painting. Yeah.
Nice.
How important is it for kids to be allowed to explore their own creativity?
So important. Like, really, it's so important. And again, that doesn't mean art lessons or music lessons necessarily. And even, like, I'm a big fan of Minecraft. That's incredibly creative. I don't want my kids on devices all the time, but there are applications that you can use where technology is used to make something. That's really cool. The kind of things you can make in Minecraft, if you haven't looked at what that is, it's pretty neat. Or my eldest is into 3D animation, and he'll spend hours creating these things on the computer, and that is a beautiful way of creating. But also, your Motorhead there, that's creativity, that like figuring out how a motor works, and then maybe even trying to design something new and exciting, or putting together things, that's creativity. So yeah, just trying to figure out where it is. We all have, and I think if we don't have an outlet for creativity in our life, it's something to look for ourselves. We should,
Yes.
I think, as human beings, create.
Yeah.
My kid's downstairs watching the Minecraft movie, so he's high in my
There you go. So he's getting ideas. Lego, like, build the Lego from the instructions the first time, sure, but then take it apart and make something cool, like do, or cooking, follow the recipes and learn how to do that, but then get some ingredients and figure out something else. Like, everything can be creative if we just give it the chance to. And I guess this is the biggest thing. You've got to fail a lot. We have to get good at failing.
Yeah.
If you're good at failing and picking yourself up and going, okay, that didn't work, now what? You are going to be happier in your life and more successful, both. But if we're afraid to fail, we won't push into the magnificence of who we can be, because we'll be afraid, right? And we won't achieve. And I think achievement is the lesser part. We won't be happy because we're afraid. We don't want to live in fear. So we want our kids to be really comfortable with failure. And again, our education system's not great at that.
No.
No.
Do you think our education system has sufficient art classes being offered to the children?
I don't think that is mandated the way that we may think. So every school has a different amount being offered, and that can be like almost none to quite a lot. As long as arts are integrated into learning, I'm fine with that. If you take out art, music, drama, you really are missing so much of what's going on for our kids. And I think, sadly, a lot of us, our experience with art is, high school, and here's your assignment, and here's the grading, and here's whether or not you were successful or not. That's not creativity at all.
No.
Creativity is given materials and you do it, and no one's evaluating whether or not you've been successful or not. So finding ways to put art and music and drama into other subjects, I think, is probably the best course of action. And having art, music, drama classes that teach the rigor of it, that's valuable too, but maybe to me less valuable. Again, I'm probably gonna have teachers be like,
I mean, we all learned how to play the recorder, right? That was our music.
Yes.
But do you remember how to play the recorder? I don't.
No.
I played the flute. And
okay.
I pretended to play the flute, if that counts.
Yeah. I don't remember it.
I have recorders hiding in my house because I refuse to let them in.
Do they not do it anymore? Is it not mandatory? Oh, man.
No.
They do it at my kids' school.
Do they?
Okay.
Yeah.
As long as other people are suffering, then it makes me feel a little bit better.
In China, all the kids in our school, once they reached grade 1, so in grade 1, 2, and 3, violin was mandatory. And I'm telling you, 300 kids learning how to play violin is like the migraine you cannot imagine. Like, it's just, the violin concert was the worst thing in the world.
No. How early do you think children should be exposed to art and being creative?
Oh, as soon as possible, I think. Yeah, I think, and we naturally do that, right? With play. I think that we just stop playing too soon. We shouldn't ever stop playing. We should be playing. Yeah. So I
not
think
if you're neurodivergent, you still keep doing it.
Yeah, probably not.
Not everyone knows, but I still keep doing it.
Yeah, it's important to have those, never stop playing for sure.
We work with 12 months to like 5 years old. So when I interview a potential parent of a 1-year-old, I'm like, don't send them in anything nice because we do lots of arts and crafts. And they're like, oh, but they're 1. I'm like, oh, but they still get to use the glue. They get to hold the scissors. They get to, do everything that the bigger kids do. They get to try. And they're like, what? And some parents are like, oh, that's amazing. That's great. Like, and other parents are like, 1-year-olds should not have scissors. I'm like, they're not like kitchen scissors. They're not the scissors I use. They're like safety scissors. They're fine. And I even have ones that have 0 blade. Like, it's just plastic. They don't actually cut anything. They get to use those. But I'm like, how?
Yeah, well, I'm so glad to hear that. Yes.
Yeah, I'm like, why should 1-year-olds not be able to like experience that. And watching a 1-year-old just being able to like immerse themselves in like paint, and I mean it gets all over, and sometimes I'm
Absolutely.
like, should I hose them down? Like they are so covered. But I'm like, their experience was so magical watching them do that. So I'm with you. The earlier the better. Like
Yes. And when you're creating together, like the older kids watching a 1-year-old are there are going to be ideas that they gather. Like creating together is something amazing as well. Like creating on your own is one thing, but creating with a group is just it's powerful. So yeah, the
yeah,
older kids are probably getting something from that experience that 1-year-old is doing too.
exactly.
Well, and just like yesterday, my kids home from school, because their last day was Thursday,
Yeah.
made a whole creative scene in my house. So I had stickers on my doors with room numbers. They had beds in each room. They had a sign that they put out and actually stopped a car about a movie theater and a museum in my house. But they did it all. Like they took rope that they found off of one toy and made like a little barricade, and they wrote signs. And my oldest is 8, so he was doing the writing, but then his sister, and then I had a 3-year-old that was following along, and they had like their little teddy bear watching the movie, and like just
Yeah,
things like that. That's why I
Brilliant.
always say is like I'm not going to force them. They don't want to sit there and paint and do that. That's fine. We can do something else. I was like, I don't have to do art all the time. Like you don't have to sit there and teach them their ABCs and this is how
No.
you
yeah,
write it. But like they can learn it another way too. Like let them while they're
Yes.
young.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. That's so good.
How do you feel about teacher-led art projects in young children?
So by that, I'm guessing you mean like everybody does, we all have the paper, we all do this circle here, we do that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
hate those. I hate those. But it's funny that kids sometimes want you to do that so that they
Yeah.
can learn how. I guess there is a place for teaching kids maybe how to do like here's how I would draw that, but we're not all going to do that, or here's how I would paint it, just so they have some of the skill of like figuring out how to do it. But no, like, and even like those adult paint parties where you all do the same painting, I'm sure they're really fun. But I just don't, I think you're missing out on the opportunity to be creative then. That's more
Yeah.
about building skills and learning how to do something. And it's not truly art, is it?
No.
We want to give them both, I guess, a little bit of like skill development, but and know when that's what you want and know when it's not
Yeah.
what you want. And then I think we also have to educate parents on the value of having process art, that
Yeah.
your kid's going to bring this home and it's going to look like a dog's breakfast, but that is what I wanted them to do. If
Yeah.
I wanted them all to have the same little thing, we would be doing something else, and that's a different thing. This is
Yeah.
about creativity. Yeah. Even when I'm teaching art in school, like I'll say, okay, we're gonna look at this artist and we're gonna be inspired by their art. But eventually the kids know they'll be like, okay, but what if I don't want to do that? I'm like, then don't do it. What do you want to do? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like I like I'm
Right.
never gonna make them do this thing. Yeah.
Does art help children struggling with like depression and anxiety?
It certainly can. I think as much as I am a creative person, I'm pretty analytical. And when I'm going through something emotional, it's easy for me to analyze, like, oh, I wonder why I think that. It's so interesting. But I'm in no way touching my emotions, right? I'm just staying all analytical. Art helps bypass that because it's a
Yeah.
defense mechanism, and it can be for kids too. Like, so if you can find ways to touch the emotion that we really don't want to go near because it's uncomfortable, but that's what we want
Yeah.
to teach kids, that yeah, you do have to just go through it. You can't just shove it or bury it or throw it out. It's always going to be there. So yeah,
Right.
I think, but again, that it has to be the right kind of art that's going to touch them, or the right time, I guess, because that could be, I mean, journaling sometimes is really healing for me. Sometimes it like art journaling where you're putting words with images. Sometimes it's just drawing. And then for some people, it might not be any of those. It might be something else, but it certainly has a potential to be very healing.
Nice. Do you find children are more open to doing art?
I don't know very many kids who don't love art. Like I think,
Mhm.
they're all willing to give it a go, and they're all excited when art's coming up. They're like, yeah. Um,
Yeah,
and their attention span is going to vary, right? Like, so they
right.
might do something quick and be like, yeah, I'm done. Yay. And that's their excitement. I don't have very many kids who would say they don't like art.
Yeah. I think I've had one kid in the 25 years I've worked with kids that is, I'm like, okay, let's do a craft. And they'll put like one sticker, draw a circle and be like, I'm done. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
that's your art. That's fine.
Yeah.
What benefits does art have for neurodivergent children?
Again, I think that when you're talking about anxiety and depression, so neurodiversity, it comes with high emotionality and rejection sensitivity, which is where you're very attuned to the messages people are giving you, and more likely to take a negative view. So for example, if someone doesn't say hello to you in the same tone of voice they did before, you might automatically go, oh, they're mad at me, and start sort of
Oh,
spiraling. That's a very
That's
neurodivergent.
me.
Yeah.
yeah.
So kids need to be able to, so they have these extra emotions, I guess, the extra anxieties, and a sort of a deep understanding that they're not the same, and
Yeah.
and a tendency to mask that, to try to be the same by being what
Yep.
they see other people. So art can give them a chance to manage those anxieties, and to find ways to bring that, to sort of regulate, to bring that down, because
Yeah.
it is there are high emotions involved in having neurodiversity. So having a little corner to just draw, or to just color, or to create, can be very helpful for those things.
Yeah. What types of art is best to expose children to?
I'm not sure there is a best type. I think we want to give them a chance to try as many things as possible, because they all meet different needs. Like
Right.
working with clay is going to be different than painting and drawing, and they'll naturally find ones that they gravitate to more, or that they enjoy mastering. So just want to
Yeah.
try to give them a good overall exposure to as many as possible.
Awesome.
What type of art class would you suggest for a beginner?
Oh, okay, that's a good question. I think and I guess this is my own bias, but I think that everyone can draw if they're given the tools that they need. So I think maybe a drawing class, because there are so many people who are like, I can't draw. But when you take drawing down to its basic form, you're just looking at shapes around you. And if you can teach your brain not to try to fill in information, but just look at shapes and put them on the paper in front of you, most people can have some success doing that. And then drawing, you can build on that. I guess on the opposite end, finding something where, like abstract art, where there's nothing that you have to create that looks like anything,
Yeah.
that's got a really high success, right? Like if it's fun to do, and you at the end you're like, okay, there it is, and they all look different, and there is no one way to do it, that's a good beginner art activity too.
Yeah. No one fails. I like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's good to build confidence that way too, I would
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it is.
What suggestions would you give to parents that want to start encouraging their children to explore their creativity at home?
I'd say find out what kind of things they are interested in, maybe expose them, like by viewing, going to museums and looking at art, or going to plays and being part of drama productions, going and seeing sculptures. When kids see it, they may not even be aware it's out there, right? So we want to be
Yeah.
exposing our kids to, like, these are the things that you could do if you were interested in, and then they'll naturally want to find out more about certain things. But I loved taking the kids when they were younger to museums and art galleries, and I don't think I could drag my teenagers to many places right now, but when they were younger, I could. I think,
Yeah.
like and there's so much free art around the city where you can go around and just see cool exhibits and street art and street performances. And
Yeah.
actually, my teenager was telling me about a place downtown. Now I've forgotten the name, but it was like a free sort of drop-in art place. She said she walked in and this guy was playing the guitar and everyone sat in a circle and then he would tell a story and then someone else would be invited to tell a story and then he would play the guitar. She's like, it was so cool, Mom. Like,
That
I'm
is
so glad there's
cool.
something out there. That's neat.
Yeah,
So yeah,
that's awesome. That sounds so cool.
yeah, I wish I knew the name of it. Maybe I'll try to email it to you so you can pop it in
Yeah,
there.
I'd totally
Yeah,
check that out. Yeah.
yeah. I think what you were doing, Kashmir, too, with letting your kids just take over the house and create like, I've got pictures of my kids. I wake up in the morning and they've built a fort out of cereal boxes. Like that is creativity. That's cool. We want to encourage them to do that kind of thing.
Okay, so where can people find more info about like your art classes and your tutoring services and all that stuff?
Sure, I've got a website. It's having said that, I need to update it more often than it does, but it's just mindstudio.ca. All one word. Most like it's probably easiest just to go on there and email me a question and because it's difficult to put on this kind of services I provide. There's a ton. So like I work with homeschooling families and I can create a plan for a homeschooling year or one-on-one tutoring or private art classes or small group art classes or community events. Like, so I just don't put it all on there. It would be
Right.
a long list. So yeah, just email me and say, do you do this? Or yeah, then
Nice.
I can get back to you. Yeah, just like you did. Thanks for inviting me on this podcast, Joanne. I think that's really neat.
Yeah, no worries. No, I found one of your comments in a Facebook group. I think it was just like some random post, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." So then I'm like looking you up, and I'm like, "Yes,
Yeah.
definitely." Thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. I think you are fascinating with all the stuff that you have done, all the places you have taught. It's amazing. So we've really loved having you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I always love talking about school and art, and these are all my favorite things to talk about. So thank you. It's been fun.
So that's it for Day Home Divas this week.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Day Home Divas, on TikTok at Day Home Divas, and join our Facebook group Day Home Divas. If anyone has any topics you want us to cover, or if you have any questions or suggestions, you can email us at dayhomedivas@gmail.com.
We would also appreciate it if you could rate and review us on whatever platform you're listening on. It really helps the podcast move up on their charts so it gets more exposure. Hope you join us again next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.